Welcome, everyone, to the Friday, February 18th edition of the Signals from Mars live stream brought to you by the Mars Attacks podcast. And Brad, you were headbanging off air there.
I was digging your song, man. I was feeling it. I'm trying to be more passionate about music. I think we had that discussion during Fireside. Yeah, it's a gift. And before we go on, I just have to say something. Happy birthday, CEO Dave. There you go. I know he's watching, listening, and by the way, he loves you, Victor.
Yeah, he commented on YouTube on a YouTube video earlier this week. He was watching Trivia Tuesday while he was driving, he said. And I'm thinking, my goodness.
Well, you know, Connecticut, right, Jose? All the roads are straight there, right? So you can watch TV and drive.
A lot of traffic, a lot of insurance companies, that's for sure. But want to say hello to Jose in the chat, Rob Rowe in the chat as well.
Hey, Rob.
Everyone is doing well tonight, and welcome to our Rush discussion. And we talked a little bit about Rush on the Fireside pre-show, but we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here. Obviously, joining me is Johan. Actually, Johan, I got to put you on the top here because Johan was petitioning for this, like the good politician that he is, to have us discuss Rush, and the day has come. This is like a global holiday, Rush Day here on Singles from Mars. We also have joining us Jeremy, Mr. Patron's Pick in the UK, and we have Mr. Yarg Metal pimping his own T-shirt. Brad Dahl of Yarg Metal showing off his merch. Where can people pick that shirt up, Brad?
Yargmetal.com.
Okay, there you go.
I'm thinking of actually jumping into your merch store and seeing if we can work something out.
Maybe we could do something.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Rush here, folks. If you've joined us for any of the other band discussions, we've discussed a lot of different things. And let's kick things off, obviously, with Johan. The first question to go around is, Johan, when is the first time that you remember hearing Rush?
It was 1986.
Okay.
And it was on this record.
The Hearing Aid. Yeah.
Hearing Aid. The song Distant Early Warning from Grace Under Pressure in a live version was on the B side. And I love that song. Great chorus, great atmosphere. And after that, I tried to listen to, I think it was Power Windows. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't ready because I was 14 and I was more into, distorted guitars and gang vocals at that time.
Right.
So I wasn't ready. And I didn't listen to, I heard some Rush songs, but I didn't connect with it. But in the late 90s, when Neil's first his daughter died, and then his wife died. Everybody heard about that tragedy. And a couple of years later, Vapor Trails came out.
Right.
And I bought that CD, and I loved it. It was different. It was not the Rush that I've heard before. And after that, I started to go back in the catalog, and then I absolutely fell in love with the band. It's the best band I ever heard. It's so different. It's different. It's Rush. I can't say it better. It speaks to me. the lyrics are different from other metal bands. I love metal, but there's something about Rush that speaks to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it better. Yeah, I'll stop there. Yeah.
Okay. Jeremy, can you recall the first time you heard Rush?
Yeah, it would have been around the late 1970s, probably about 78, 79. I had a friend of mine who had the Archives album, which I later bought, and I've got the copy of here. Oh, there you go. That's the one. And so he was playing me the first couple of albums, which was obviously, they were released earlier than when I heard them.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I was sort of starting to hear Rush, I think they'd obviously released, I'm trying to think what they released. Let me just think. They had, 2112 was out, of course. And 2112 was interesting because we were at garage parties, and another friend of mine had some disco lights. There was sort of 3 or 4 lights in a box, and he fixed them up to the record player, so that when at the very beginning of the sort of the party, when none of the girls had arrived yet, so he could put on a bit of Rush, and so he stuck on 2112, and you know that beginning bit where it's that do do, and all the lights were going in sync to the 2112, and so
Right.
we never got to the end of 2112. We only played 3 or 4 minutes of it, but that really hit me at the time as something really exciting, you know, because it started off the party. So that was probably my earliest introduction to Rush. But go back to Archives, which I really heard first, probably just before 2112. I mean, all those rock, you know, they were a proper rock band at that time. So listening to songs like sort of Working Man and Finding My Way and In the Mood and Fly By Night, they were the first tracks that I really heard. And I just thought that Geddy Lee had this, you know, different voice, which you didn't hear in another band. I wasn't really getting the drums at that stage because obviously John Rutsey was, I think, on the first album, and then Neil Peart took over after that. And I wasn't at the age where I was really digging the technicalities of Rush, which came later. I think it was just they were an out and out 70s rock band, and really good, and had these catchy lyrics as well, you know, catchy choruses.
Yeah, and 2112 side A is only 20:34, so it is 20 minutes 34 seconds long, and you got like 4 minutes in, so you guys only listened to like the overture.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Brad, first time you heard Rush?
You know, I got to comment on something you just said there as far as the duration of the song 2112. Why couldn't they have made it last 2112? They could have, you know, tuned the guitar a little bit longer during that one segment, or I mean, they probably just weren't thinking about that. I think that would have been totally cool if the song was actually 21 minutes and 12 seconds long. But I digress. But the funny thing is, the very first time I heard Rush, and CEO Dave, I don't know if you're listening, but you should be. I'm not sure who bought this album in 1976, 2112. I don't know whether I bought it or he bought it, but somehow it ended up in my bedroom, and that's where it stayed once it made it into our house. And yeah, when it dropped the needle, the very beginning there, 2112, the overture, it was just like, what it was great. There was nothing else that sounded like what these guys were doing. Geddy's voice, definitely an acquired taste. You know, but yeah, he was just as like, what is it with these Canadian guys that sing so high? You know, Rick Emmett, Geddy Lee. There's more than that, just that too. But anyway, yeah, they just sounded like nobody else, and just it was very epic and rocking, and for me, of course the bass was a big part of it, but the drums were what really brought me in. I was just like, this is just so cool. So yeah, 2112, that's the first album I heard. The first side wore that out, learned to play it right away. The second side, I think there was like the 3 songs on there that I really liked, and then there was 2 that kind of were growers.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the first song was it Passage to Bangkok. Is that the first song on
Yeah.
the second side?
Yep.
Yeah, that, and then Lessons, I think, is the last song, right?
Something from Nothing, or Something for
Well, something you can't get something for nothing. Yeah, but Lessons is in there too. That's a great song. So yeah, there's yeah, and so I didn't know anything else about them at that point. And I was just like, guy, who releases an album and like one side is one song, and then there's just a handful of songs on the other side. So very cool stuff. Loved it.
Yeah, it's interesting because Neil Peart doesn't write anything on this album.
What?
Yeah,
You wrote the lyrics, didn't you?
no. Okay, my mistake.
Lyrics.
This is
Yeah, he wrote all the lyrics.
Yeah.
I mean, starting with the first album he was on, which was let me see now. Is it Fly By Night?
Yeah.
Or Crest?
Yep.
Yeah. Fly By Night. Didn't he write all the lyrics on that? Maybe.
Yeah, the way that it's set up on Wikipedia is just kind of weird because
A little bit.
I was looking at the tracks and it says music, Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, for
Right.
like pretty much everything. And then for all of side A, it has nothing for lyrics. And then on side 2, it says Lessons is Lifeson and Tears is Lee. And then all the way at the top, it says all lyrics are written by Neil Peart, except
Yeah.
where noted. So he wrote the lyrics for all but 2 songs with vocals on. So my bad. For me, I can remember this was in the 80s, sleeping over my aunt and uncle's house, and one of my cousin Walter, saying, "Have you checked Rush out yet?" No, what's Rush? I don't know what Rush is. They have the greatest drummer ever to live. I'm like, okay, what does Rush sound like? I have no idea. And he had Tom Sawyer recorded off of the radio. So he played it for me. And much to what you said, initially I was thinking, well, Geddy's voice sounds kind of different, and the groove is kind of different. I was thinking, hey, this kind of sounds like Led Zeppelin, but it doesn't. It's kind of, So initially I didn't know what to think of it. And of course, back then you didn't have streaming services. You didn't have, what you have nowadays. So it was one of these things where, oh, are you going to get a Rush album? Someday I'll get it. So I didn't get to hear anything, a full, actually, I'm trying to think, the first full Rush album that I heard was Counterparts. Because it was the first thing that came into my possession. That this is like 92, I think when
93,
that came out.
93 Counterparts.
93, okay. And then at the same time, a friend of mine had got a greatest hits, got Chronicles was the name, which is a 3 CD set. What happened was Rush was always a band that was played a lot on US radio. So especially the hits. I mean, if you want to look at, a lot of the stuff that they've done over the years, I mean, Spirit of the Radio, Limelight, Red Barachetta, Closer to the Heart, and Tom Sawyer were on the radio every single day. And then as time went on, every now and then you would hear YYZ. Every now and then you would hear there's a few others. And whenever there was a new album that came out, the leadoff single would always get played on radio as well. So I remember when Test for Echo came out, the song Test for Echo was played a lot. Roll the Bones got played a lot. Show Me Don't Tell Me got played a lot. So it was a band that was always on the radio. So I never really, as much as I was interested in them, I kind of got my fill from the radio playing 6 or 7 songs by Rush every single day. Well, it was kind of enough. So it got to the point where I had to stop listening to them because it was just the same songs over and over again. luckily, in the 90s, that changed because, I started looking into a lot of their newer material just because I like the band, but I didn't want to get bombarded by the same material over and over again. So the first time I heard them was probably 83-ish, and it was Tom Sawyer with a staticky recording off of the radio. So there you go. And Johan, I guess finding out that Rush got played a lot on US radio is something that's surprising to you.
I know, because I have read a little bit too much about Rush, but I know that's the thing in US. Yeah, Rush were not so big here.
Right.
In fact, Rush didn't play in Sweden between 1979 and 2004.
Right.
So that says a lot.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, I watch NHL and they play Tom Sawyer
all the time.
Yeah, and that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
And the other thing too is that they've been able to expand into pop culture as well, because they've been featured on South Park. They were featured. Yeah. Alex Lifeson is on several episodes of Trailer Park Boys as well.
Yeah.
They're a band that's, for all their proficiency in music, they're known for their humor as well. So they're the first band to, they themselves make fun of themselves. So it's always interesting to see. We had talked about during the pre-show about the evening of Rush. If you have any of their DVDs or Blu-rays, you'll see that there's always comedy bits going on between the songs that are usually up on the big screens at their shows. So, I mean, they've been, so many people have loved them to bring them into, to bring them onto South Park, to bring them on Trailer Park Boys and different things, outside of the element that you would expect to find them. You're saying that they didn't play in Sweden for all those years, but obviously you've gotten to see them.
Yeah.
How many times?
2004 on the R30 tour in Stockholm, Globe, Sweden. Sold out. Had a beer with Mickey D in the in the middle of the two. In the break between the two sets.
Intermission, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I saw them on Snakes and Arrows and on the Time Machine tour and on Sweden Rock.
Wow.
Wow, that's not wow, but that's when you are born in 1972, that's the amount you can see them in Sweden if you don't go abroad.
Sure. Which of those concerts is your favorite?
Snakes and Arrows.
Snakes and Arrows, okay.
Absolutely. We had good seats in Stockholm, fourth row with chairs, and close to Getty, and it was an absolutely fabulous concert. It was, the tears were running 90% of honestly, the tears were running 90% of the time. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. What a concert, what a band. Yes.
Cool. And Steve is checking in the chat. Just dropping by to say hi.
Hey,
love you guys. Rock on. Yeah, we love you too, Steve. Thanks for checking in with us. It's funny because there's a very prominent bass player singer of a local band here. One of the bigger bands from my area in Spain. And we met up at I don't remember if it was when I interviewed him or when we met up at a show. And he talked about the fact that the other members of the band wanted him to play keyboards, sing and play bass at the same time, that they were saying, well, we want you to do like Geddy Lee. And he said, well, I couldn't do both at the same time. And I said to him, did you have the the floor pedals. So what do you mean? He goes, what, for like distortion on the bass? I'm like, no. Geddy had keyboards, but because he was playing the bass parts with his feet. So if you look at him, he's got what looks like a keyboard setup, but actually each one of those, the pedals at his feet are set up to play different bass notes, different chords, depending on the song. And he was like, oh, it like blew his mind. He said, that changes everything. He goes, I'm not going to tell the other members of the band because they'll want me to try this again. But he said, now it makes sense. He goes, because I was trying to play the keyboards with my feet and play the bass at the same time. I go, no, it's the other way around. He was playing the keyboards with his hands. He was playing the bass with his feet. So there you go. Brad walks away and CEO Dave chimes in. CEO Dave says 2112 is his favorite work of theirs. Geddy's pipes were at their peak. There you go. The Metal Molly checking in with us. Jeremy, you go to a lot of different shows. Did you ever have the luxury of seeing Rush?
I wish you'd never asked me that question, because the answer is no, and it's a terrible mistake that I've made, and I'll never live it down. First of all, to say
What?
First of all, to say that Rush didn't always play a lot over here, in the early
Right.
days or through the 80s and 90s. And then I wasn't a massive fan of Rush. I liked a lot of Rush songs, but I was never they were never on my radar. They were never a band that I really wanted to see live until quite recently, just before they broke up. So I think we're talking about where the last album came out about 10 years ago now, which shocked me for a start, because I didn't realize it was that long ago. So we're looking at maybe 11 years ago, 12 years ago. They came over to Manchester. They were doing one of these 3-hour shows. I was umming and ahhing about getting a ticket, and I was waiting and waiting. And then I went on to the Manchester Arena site to go and get my ticket, and it was sold out.
Oh, wow.
And that is my story of seeing Rush live.
Well, Brad, let's see. Does Brad have a story about seeing Rush in Pomona Hills or something?
Chino Hills. No.
There you go.
That's a great, Pomona. Actually, of course, 2112. I don't remember, I was 16, so I was probably, because it came out in April, so I was still 15. So obviously I couldn't drive. I don't know. They must have played Los Angeles on that tour, but I don't remember seeing that advertised. So the first chance I had to see them was the next studio album, which was Farewell to Kings, which I believe was recorded in England. Isn't that right, Jeremy? You were and so that was the very first time that I got to see them. That was at the Santa Monica Civic, and they were headlining.
Hold on a second. Hold on. It was recorded in Wales.
Oh, okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
UK. Good. That's UK.
You could potentially start a fight over this.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Get it right.
That's like telling Johan that something is in Finland when it's actually in Sweden.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I was in the Hong Kong airport once, and I knocked over a life-size cutout of Jackie Chan, and I almost started an international incident. I thought, people, you could like hear a pin drop after I did this. It was not on purpose, by the way. And I thought, I just desecrated a national treasure.
National treasure. Yep.
Yeah, and so very bad on me. But I don't know. Hopefully they'll let me come back someday.
Your picture is in every airport. This man is prohibited from entering the country. But,
that is so true. So so Wales, England, Scotland, Ireland, the whole thing. Yeah, UK. So I apologize to all our UK fans out there. And the Estonian fans as well. I don't want them to feel slighted.
Ireland is not in the UK. That will get you in a lot of deep.
Well,
Northern Ireland is in the
Northern
UK.
All right, now I'm really going to hell. North Ireland, right?
Yeah, Northern Ireland is, yeah.
Okay. Guy, all right, send me back to geography class. So yeah, we kind of got away from Rush. So anyway, all right. So first time I saw Rush.
Farewell to Kings.
Farewell
Yes.
to Kings, yeah. So me and my buddy Ed Bizzovi, he was the drummer in my band, and we're huge fans. We bought the album, and it kind of took us the production on it was so different than 2112. Which I like it now, but at the time I was just kind of like, this is kind of weird. And that's when they started adding in all the little percussive stuff, and then started adding in the keyboard elements as well. And so it was kind of like, what is going on here? So we bought tickets. Santa Monica Civic is one of my all-time favorite concert venues, because it's like a big theater. You know, the floor slopes up. It's fixed seating. So Johan, there's seats on everywhere, and you can't move them. It's like being in a movie theater. It's a pretty big place though, but there's not really a bad seat in the place. The sound is great because it's not real tall, although there is a balcony in the back. And so yeah, I loved going there. I think that was the first time I'd seen a show there. The other cool thing, and I just have to bring this up, is the warm-up band for that tour was UFO. Oh, wow. And it was the first time I got to see UFO. It was on the of course, my mind just totally went blank there. Too Hot to Handle, and
is that Lights Out or
Lights? No, yeah, it was Lights Out. Thank you. Yeah. And so they were the warm-up band. First time ever getting to see them, and Michael Schenker and all that. And I got to be honest, they weren't that great of a live band. They kind of made a lot of mistakes, and of course now we know there were some issues within the band and substances and that, but I still loved it. And then Rush came on, and I do remember this, that before they came on, they like rolled out this really plush white shag carpet for the guys to be on. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd never seen a concert where that kind of thing was going on. And I figured it out right away though when they hit the stage, because Geddy was barefoot. Yeah. And so he was, and I think he was barefoot. Well, he probably liked it. It's comfortable, but also because he had all these pedals that he was playing that was triggering keyboard stuff, playing keyboards with his feet. I don't remember him having a proper keyboard up top. So I think he was just playing most of that stuff with his feet at the time. Playing a Rickenbacker still back then, so that was huge for me as a bass player. Getting to get that original, what I considered original Rush sound. And anyway, the concert was just phenomenal, and I was just totally transfixed by Geddy being able to play all those parts and sing all those parts at the same time while playing stuff with his feet.
Right.
How is this guy doing this? It is just mind-boggling, and I'm sure he's talked about how he got to be able to do that. But I'd love to have that discussion with him. It's like because I know how hard it is for me to play and sing at the same time, and I just don't know how he did that. If that was just a natural thing or he had to really work at it. And his singing was on point. I mean, his voice was very strong back then. As CEO Dave said, that 2112, his pipes were at their peak. He was still singing really, really well on Farewell to Kings. I mean, he sang everything just fantastically. I can't remember a lot of other specifics about the show. I mean, they played a lot of Farewell to Kings, which, again, that's one thing I really miss in today's concerts, where bands put out a new album and they're afraid to play anything off it because they feel like everybody's going to go to the bathroom if they play a new song. I mean, I loved it back then, the excitement of a new album, and it's like, oh, what are they going to play off it? And they played a good portion of it, and then they also mixed in a lot of old songs as well. It was a great, great show, and luckily I've been able to see them many times after that.
Brad?
That's a missing thing where, bands were, I remember putting out VHSs in the 80s, and every VHS you could count on 5 or 6 tracks off of the new album to sell that new album.
Yep.
So, go ahead, Johan.
I was thinking of asking Brad, since you have seen them a lot of times, did you see them in the 80s or early 80s or?
Early 80s, yeah. Grace Under Pressure, saw them on that tour. I believe that was the Swing Auditorium out in San Bernardino, where I saw them, and I think that was when 38 Not So Special was warming up for them. That was another. I mean, every time I've seen them, they've been fantastic. Never seen a bad show. One thing, and here's, as a bass player, one of my beefs about any concert I go to is you can hardly hear the bass player. That just drives me crazy. And that's not the case with Rush, man. They're sound guys. They know, as opposed to what I talked about on Fireside, sound guy problems. Their sound guy always nailed it. I mean, you can hear the vocals perfectly. You can hear the guitar. You can hear the drums. And you can really hear the bass. You can hear everything that Geddy's playing. It sounded so good. Every concert I've been to of theirs sound really, really good. So I guess it's easier when you only have 3 instruments to mix too. But of course, I guess you hear all the keyboards. And
yeah.
I also think that probably has to do with the fact that how many times have you heard stories about Rush bickering amongst themselves? I don't think I've ever heard anything about them not getting along, whereas almost every other band out there, you hear about this person and that person, and behind the scenes, this person hated the other person, and that person had this person's instrument turned down or their mic turned off. So I think with Rush, they've always probably had great sound because they've always gotten along great, and at the same time, I think they've also always seen it as a team effort. You know, it's funny because you see some of the behind the scenes stuff where they talk about the beginnings of the band. They still talk about John Rutsey like he was just as important as everyone else, that was in the band. And even though Neil was superior on a lot of different levels, they still felt that John was just as important as, the rest of them. So I think that's really a credit to their not having an ego and wanting to have a machine that worked well together. So
yeah, one thing you can see in their later concerts is the camaraderie on stage. Yeah. They were always smiling at each other, and most of the time Neil Peart was very serious. You rarely saw him smile, but every so often one of the guys would go back there and do something that would actually make him smile.
Yeah.
And that always made me feel good. It's like, hey, these guys really, they're not just there putting on, doing a job.
Right.
They're there because they're friends, and they love what they're doing. I mean, they're very passionate about it, and they're having fun.
Yeah, and that's funny because Neil seemed so serious, and then there were like a lot of backstage things where there would be people like trying to interview them or whatever, and he's always playing straight. But you could tell that, he was throwing jabs at the person, not to be a dick, but to be funny, to see if that person would get what he was trying to say. So it was funny. He was always playing the straight man, but at the same time, he was very humorous with a lot of the things that he said and a lot of the things that he did. He just didn't express it the same way as Geddy and as Alex did, So
yeah, kind of interesting thing about him too. From I've never met him, but I had one of my pharmacy students at the time was working at this bicycle shop in Salt Lake Valley. And right. Neil came in there when they were in town on tour, and he said, all they talked about was bicycles, and he said he was just fantastic. He said he was really open, but then he said other people would come up and be like, "Oh, Neil, drummer," and all this stuff, and he said he immediately would clam up and didn't really want to talk about that,
right?
Which was interesting. He said, but yeah, he says when you start talking about bicycles, he would just totally light up and open up, and but he didn't want to be known as out in public as the drummer for Rush. And I think you kind of get that in the lyrics of Limelight as well.
Yeah. And I mean, just think about all the things that he wrote about. I mean, not only the lyrics, but his books and everything else. I mean, this is someone who didn't want to ride the tour bus. He would either, you know, depending on the tour, he would ride a motorcycle from show to show,
Yep.
or they would rent like old like Ferraris or old Cobras or stuff like that, and he would drive like vintage cars from show to show. And if they had days off, he would go cycling. You know, he always did things to keep his mind off the rest. And again, it's amazing how they were able to go for as long as they were and as proficient as they could, you know. So that to me is amazing. Johan, you were trying to make a point before.
Yes, I were, but now I can remember. They had in the 80s, Alex's guitar was a little bit put aside to the synthesizers, and that put the band in there were a little bit of trouble inside the band during that time. But, you know, just a point there, just to say that. But no, thank you. I want to say more, but I can't find the words. Thank you.
So what you're saying is that during that point in time, there were issues on the inside because Alex maybe wanted to have his guitars featured more, but what they were writing didn't lend itself to having those guitar parts.
That's kind of an interesting comment, though, because I mean, when you figure him and Geddy wrote all the music, basically.
No, Geddy wrote all the music.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that explains why his solo album sounds the way it does.
Geddy wrote all the music,
but you could also hear like Alex's solo album, Victor, which is that named after you, Victor?
Obviously.
Oh, of course. You can certainly hear Rush-isms and a lot of that too. But you would think with three guys that Alex couldn't have been pushed to the side so much that he had to be buying into what they were doing. That he's not going to just sit back and say, "Okay, Geddy, whatever you want to do, you know, call him. Let me know when you need a little guitar on this song."
What was it? The producers actually pushing it as well, because during that era, producers tended to push bands to record something more in tune with the times, you know, and something that was saleable as well.
Yeah,
that's a great question, Jeremy, and that's a discussion I'd love to have with them. That once they, you know, went on and started using other producers other than Terry Brown, you know, what kind of a role did those guys play in the songs and the presentation of those songs? So
but Geddy was the musical master, and Neil was the engine of the band, and in between was Alex to put the nice tones in between, if you understand. He put the
glue
guitar,
everything
the
together.
guitar magic in between. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's move on to discussing favorite Rush album. Now, I know that on the pre-show, Johan was saying that he hadn't decided yet. Jeremy had 3 albums that he really wanted to focus on, but ended up going back to his original choice. Brad kind of seemed like his mind was made up, and I kind of knew what I was going to go with, which Jeremy called me out on it. When we were going back.
You start.
You want me to start? Okay.
Someone's.
Okay. For me, and Jeremy pointed it out. As much as I've loved what the band has done over the years, when Snakes and Arrows came out, there was just something about that album, and I really like the song Far Cry, But when I started listening to the rest of the album, you know, when I got to songs like Armor and Sword, which is the second track off of the album, Working the Angels, Spindrift is another one that I've listened to a lot, and I'm going to kind of break my own rule here. Instead of just saying 3, I'm going to give you guys a 4th, which is We Hold On, which is the album closer. Those 4 songs to this day, the album came out in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. I still play these 4 songs a lot. Okay. There are times where I haven't heard these songs in some times, and then I'll hear the chorus to Working the Angels in my head, and I have to listen to the song. So I know that this isn't going to be a popular decision amongst a lot of diehards because it is one of their later albums, but it is the album that I have listened to the most by the band, and I absolutely love it. I have the live album and I have the Blu-ray, which I've watched a lot as well, which is just magnificent. So for me, my favorite album by Rush is Snakes and Arrows. Brad, how about you?
Okay, well, as I said on the Fireside show, I had what I thought was my favorite album, but then going back and listening again to the various albums, I changed my mind.
Okay.
I know, yeah. So I had to give it the Victor M. Ruiz test. I had to just open up my mind. I like the way you listen to music. You listen like this, not like this. So
I try.
I've taken that page from you. Always listen with an open mind and never just shut things down. So anyway, I was going to say 2112 was my favorite, but re-listening, I'm going with Roll the Bones.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah. And
1991.
1991, yeah. And,
I got married.
Johan will kind of understand this. When this album came out, it was like 5-6 years after my band had been recording. And I thought, wait a second. I feel like this is an album my band would have done. I feel like these guys are now copying us, which is, of course, not the case. I'm sure they never heard us, but it kind of made me feel good because I know our songwriter in the band wasn't a Rush fan. I mean, he wasn't a guy who listened to Rush, and but yet it's like, wow, how is this how is this happening that their music and our music is kind of synergistically kind of coexisting together and sounding so much the same? But here, let me tell you why I love this album. Okay, number one, it sounds really good. Peter Collins, I think it was his 3rd album he produced for these guys, and we're talking about the role of the producer. I think that this is the perfect album for them as far as songs. I mean, every song is just rock solid. There's no huge, like, extravagant. I mean, every song stands alone so well as just a well-written song. It opens up with Dreamline, which is a song that I think they played to the end. I think they probably played it every tour after that album because it was that big of a song for them. And it's a great song. Bravado, the next song, is beautiful. It's just, the lyrics on this album are so cool because I'm not sure exactly where Neil was in his life. A lot of bad things had happened to him, but I think, still not, he hadn't hit the worst of it there. But just the whole theme of the album about, life and about life is kind of a gamble, and you kind of play the cards you're dealt, and there's just so many great themes that just fit together on this album. I mean, Ghost of a Chance, great song. I'm gonna skip the title track just because everybody knows that one. But as I've listened to that, it just sounds so good. Every instrument sounds really well. The drums are just on point, and Geddy's voice. I think they finally found the spot for Geddy's voice where it wasn't like, what the hell is that kind of a thing for somebody who didn't know Rush. It's like if you hadn't listened to Rush and you listened to this, you would be like, oh, this guy's a really good singer. He really had a nice kind of happy tone zone on this album. So I think it's their most perfect album, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is also, if you think about, and this is something Johan talked about, the different eras of the band. I think Presto was probably the first album to kind of start steering the ship back in the direction that a lot of the diehards wanted. And then Roll the Bones was finally like the album that a lot of the old time Rush fans really wanted to hear, because it brought them back to what they knew of the band. Johan, go ahead.
Yeah, you're on point there. Rupert Hine was the producer, and he's produced also Presto, and he wanted to bring Rush back as a rock band, as a three-piece.
So I was totally wrong on that. It wasn't Peter Collins.
But Peter Collins did do quite a few of them. I know that the one that I picked, it was Nick Raskulinecz.
Yep.
Yeah.
He did all the last ones.
Peter Collins did Power Windows and Hold Your Fire.
Well, I need to look into Rupert a little bit more, because I think what he did with Presto and this album, to me, they kind of fit together really, really well.
Yeah.
And again, very song-oriented albums, and very easy to just listen to. Very passionate with the music and the lyrics.
Yeah, but Peter Collins also did do Counterparts, and he did Test for Echo. So
that's right.
He did come back, and Peter Collins has worked with a lot of people. He worked with like Suicidal Tendencies as well, and
really,
yeah, yep,
cool. There's Queensryche.
Yeah, Queensryche as well.
He first came on my radar with when he worked with Nick Kershaw.
Okay.
And those albums, and Johan will probably understand this, my band, when we're in the studio, we just tore apart those albums, listening to what they were doing on them as far as the keyboards and stuff, and the production angle. So I love that guy's work.
Yeah, he did Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper. And with Queensryche, he did Operation Mindcrime, the original Empire, and Here in the Now Frontier. Also did Billy Squier, Bon Jovi, and Gary Moore.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's worked with a lot of different people.
Okay, I've been schooled. Well done, guys.
I think we're all just trying to help.
Help Brad. Please help Brad.
Jeremy, we will end the suspense now. You've been you told me earlier today that you would not, after having me tell him what I was going to pick, his response was, okay, I'll tell you my choice tonight. So the time has come.
Yeah. Well, I listened to all 19 studio albums. They span 38 years of music, and I've picked my favorite, and it was exactly the favorite that I had before I started the exercise. But what I would say is that there were a few that I was choosing between, and one was the very first album, the Rush debut album, simply because it has great songs on it. It was a real rocky album, and it was it started them all off. Great album, 1974. And then the very final album, Clockwork Angels, which I've not really listened to properly before, is absolutely superb. I mean, I used to like Snakes and Arrows more than Clockwork Angels, but now I'm veering the other way around. Songs like Caravan and Carnies and Seven Cities of Gold, it's really, what a great album to finish your career on. But it's not my favorite album.
Okay.
And my favorite album was between two, and it was between Moving Pictures and Signals, because they came out very close to each other.
Right.
And I think that this was the peak of Rush. I think this is when Rush were absolutely at the peak of their career. You may argue against that, that's fine. But in the UK, certainly, Moving Pictures was the album that really took them into the stratosphere, and when everyone was buying albums, and I think it was very high up in the charts, and It was just a superb album, but it's not my favorite. My favorite is Signals, and I bought it, and there it is, the vinyl copy, Signals. And for me, Signals is better than Moving Pictures because it's a much more cohesive album. It's 8 tracks. It starts off with Subdivisions, with that amazing that amazing intro with that keyboard that comes in, and then it ends with Countdown, which is another fantastic song. But you can pick any song off this album, and there's no low song on it. There's every song is sort of 7 or 8 out of 10, whereas other albums I feel there's some 9 out of 10s, but there's also some maybe 4 or 5 out of 10s. Occasionally they dip a bit, but there's no dip on Signals.
Okay, so if you were going to sell Signals to someone,
yeah,
what 3 songs would you choose to sell them?
So I would. So as I said, Subdivisions would be that, because it's the opening track and it's just a great song, and you can sing along to that one. I would definitely say the final track, Countdown, and probably New World Man. I mean, I think that was a single, if I'm not right. Yeah. So just because you need a bit of commerciality to sell bands, to sell albums. People need to be able to cotton onto a song that has a bit of something about it that would get in the charts. So those 3 would be it. They're not. I mean, my favorite song by Rush of all time is not on this album, but I still think this album is really cohesive, and it's probably their best effort. And to think that it came out after Moving Pictures, a year after, and to me is even better than Moving Pictures.
Yeah, definitely. See, so there are songs off of here that I missed when I said songs that got played on US radio all the time. Subdivisions, New World Man, and The Analog Kid got played plenty on radio. Subdivision is one of those that got played every single day, and I wonder if Alex Lifeson got additional points for that one because he's the one that says Subdivisions. That's I don't know if that's his only singing part throughout the career or not, but that's him.
That's the line that I sing in the bath all the time when I play the song.
There you go. See, as a guitarist, you're doing the guitarist parts.
Subdivisions. In the high school hall.
So Jeremy, you said your favorite song's not on there. Did I miss it? Did you say what your favorite Rush song?
Not yet, because I was wondering whether Victor's going to ask us that in a minute. So I was
okay.
Hold back.
All right.
I was going to hold back on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Johan, have you decided what your favorite album is?
Yes, for tonight.
For tonight.
I
don't know that one.
No, it's a new one.
He's got a bootleg. Wait a second, Johan, before you start. For tonight, Johan selects.
Yes, thank you very much. My selection is Power Windows.
Ooh.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah. Produced by Peter Collins. It's from the mid 80s. It's my favorite of Rush because strong songs. 5 of the 8 songs are played live often or quite often. And I was young in the 80s, and when I listened to Power Windows, it's like the soundtrack of the 80s. It's like this cold synthesized world, Cold War world, and strong songs, often about the nuclear race and so on. It's for me, that's a 10 out of 10 album. But I choose between Grace Under Pressure, Signals, Moving Pictures, and Hold Your Fire. So I almost have to roll the dice to say which one is my favorite. But
don't you mean Roll the Bones?
Yeah. What did I say?
You
Roll
said
the
roll
dice.
the dice. I think you should have stuck with the
Hold-
theme and say roll the bones.
Hold your fire. Roll the dice. I'm a bit nervous here because this is my big time.
No, don't worry.
You're doing great, man. Johan, we love you. We love you. I love your passion for Rush.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this week was very hard to choose between these albums, and I choose this one because they had songs like, my three favorites are Marathon, Manhattan Project, and which one should I choose? Middletown Dreams.
Excellent.
Are you familiar with these songs?
I am familiar with some of them. I've listened to the album in the past. It's just that, I mean, obviously Big Money is a song that I remember because it was on the radio all the time, and the video was played a lot when this came out. Manhattan Project and Marathon, I believe I know them from one of the live albums. Trying to think. Let's see. Yeah, off of in my Rush playlist, I have those three songs: Big Money, Manhattan Project, and Marathon in there. So
I recently bought this album just because of Johan. So
see that?
Thanks, Johan. And yeah, it's a great sounding album. And yeah.
I think they had a lot of great songs off of these albums that, like we were talking about on the pre-show, where a lot of people just associate 80s Rush as being Grace Under Pressure, Power Windows, and Hold Your Fire. And because of that, they have a stigma placed on them because of the keyboards and stuff like that. But people don't realize, once again, 1980, Permanent Waves, 1981, Moving Pictures, 1982, Signals. So the first part of the 80s, that, as Jeremy pointed out, probably the peak of their popularity. And although those other albums, again, Grace Under Pressure, Power Windows, and Hold Your Fire, probably don't have the same notoriety, it's obviously it's still the same band, and B, there's a lot of good material on there. Again, a lot of people don't go into these albums, or actually the opposite, go into the album saying, well, where's Tom Sawyer? Well, Tom Sawyer is Tom Sawyer. You're not going to have, or luckily, we didn't have them trying to do Tom Sawyer Part 2. They had enough respect for themselves and their own material to not try to regurgitate any of their past hits. Because if you think about all the hits they've had over the years, none of the songs sound alike. They all sound different. So I think that's also a credit to them, and being that each era does sound different, and being that each era did have its high points. So
yeah, I think they deserve a lot of credit for not trying to redo the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
They went into each album with a fresh approach, and it stood on its own. So well done, guys.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with, since Jeremy brought up the idea, let's go with favorite song. Jeremy, what would you consider your favorite song by Rush?
Yeah, I was between a couple, actually. I was between Tom Sawyer, because I play that probably more than any other Rush song.
Right.
I love Tom Sawyer. I just think it's just an amazing song. And it was the first track on Moving Pictures. It was at the height of their fame. Love that song. But one song that really sticks out to me is off A Farewell to Kings in '77, is Xanadu. Xanadu to me is just an amazing creative song. If you listen to it, it's got that sort of slow bit at the beginning, very atmospheric, and then it goes into that very fast bit, and then Geddy's singing sort of carries on when the band stop. It's sort of like it rolls around the music, and it's just incredible how they came up with it. So to me, Xanadu is my favorite.
You know, it's funny. I can't eat honeydew ever without thinking of that song. I can't. It's the weirdest thing. Every time like hey, there's honeydew, Xanadu. Yeah, it's like yeah. Well, I got to say, when I first heard that song, when we first got that album, that was one that kind of took me a little while to wrap my head around, because I thought, what the hell are they doing here? But yeah, what an epic song live though. I do remember that in the show when the first time I saw them, where they both had the double neck guitars, and Geddy actually played guitar part during one part of the song and would play the bass on the pedals. And I mean, God, that whole thing was such a spectacle. There was so much with three guys going on stage. I mean, Neil had added all these percussive elements, the tubular bells and the little glockenspiels, and I mean, God, there was so much stuff going on. It was like, how much more can three guys do?
Right.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Brad, what would you consider your favorite song by Rush?
Okay, well, I changed my mind. Red Barchetta is probably my, historically my favorite, because the bass part is just fantastically wonderful, stands out so well in the mix, and plus the song just is fantastic. But I'm going to go with Half the World. And the reason I'm giving Half the World the win on this is, and I'm not a guy who listens to lyrics. It's just not my thing. But for some reason those lyrics really hit me, because I think Neil nailed it. It's like half the world is this and half the world is that, and it's like, why can't we get this thing together? Plus musically, great song. A song I always wanted to cover with my band. I thought we would have made it sound really well.
Yeah, Jeremy had to mess me up and put me on the spot with this question, because as you guys are talking, I'm looking at my Rush playlist and I'm thinking, okay, I really like Red Sector A. I really like Driven. I really like One Little Victory. I really like Working Them Angels, which I mentioned before. Rush, like, what's that?
A Far Cry as well. You mentioned that one before.
Far Cry I really like, but I mean, I don't like it as much as like any of the other. I like the other songs that I mentioned off the album a lot more than Far Cry, but Far Cry I think is probably the strongest single that they've released. I don't know, post Signals probably, because that song just immediately like stood out to me. And as much as I like tracks like Roll the Bones or Show Don't Tell, those are songs that or Stick It Out is another one. I like those songs, but over the years, I haven't listened to them as much as Far Cry. Far Cry is one of those, it's a single, I don't want to, I don't want to hear it. But then the song starts up and it's like, I like this song. It's one of those things where you remember it one way, but then once the song starts going, you don't change the song. I'm going to go with One Little Victory, only because I think the lyrics are pertinent to a lot of things in life, and not giving up and trying to just battle one thing at a time, and kind of a discussion that I had with my son today, and how life is just a continuous grind where you just got to take one little victory one at a time and just try to move forward. So you asked me today, I'm going to say One Little Victory. So there you go.
Isn't it funny how we both pick songs because of the lyrics?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
I also like the music to this, just the way that it starts, because it isn't your typical time signature either. It's I'm trying to think. It might be like a 6/8 time signature that Neil starts in on, and then Geddy just starts it. Geddy and Alex start in with the no, that's actually Alex that starts in with the guitar. Then Geddy starts in with the bass. They stop, and then they kick into the song, which is just a regular like 4/4 at that point. But then like the various sections of the song have all different odd time signatures. Again, this is something that you see bands like Tool, you see bands like Mastodon, you see a lot of these bands that have done that, Soundgarden, that have used a lot of funky time signatures. And you could think of, yeah, maybe they get that from Zeppelin to an extent, but I think Rush continued to do that when Zeppelin disappeared. And I think that Rush has, again, a lot to do with a lot of progressive hard rock and metal, and even extreme progressive metal that came later on. They took that from Rush and took that from Neil Peart and took that from, you know, as you guys were talking, how Neil was trying to add all these little elements and all these different accents to the music with different out of the box instruments, percussion instruments. And I think that's led to a lot of bands, especially in extreme metal, doing that with needing to add a cymbal every note that where there's an empty space. So I love the music and I love the lyrics. The lyrics, again, have a lot to do with why it's important to me. But anyway, Johan, your favorite Rush song? Can you decide on just one? Or for you, I mean, does it rotate a lot where, you know, one song will be your favorite and then for a certain period of time and then another one will be your favorite?
Yeah.
Tonight, what is your favorite tonight from Rush?
No, but one song that's always is good is Subdivisions.
Okay.
I really I love Signals. It's absolutely amazing album, and Subdivisions is a song that I never seem to be tired of. So
okay.
I love it. It's something about that song with the keyboard intro and the feeling of the early 80s. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Johan. It's great.
It is an awesome song. It's funny because I don't remember who I was speaking to recently. We were talking about the importance of Alex Van Halen, and we had talked about the person had told me how they didn't like how Alex went to a certain sound during the 80s. And to me, there's for example, the band that I picked out today for the new releases, Birthday Massacre. The Birthday Massacre borrows a lot of sounds from the 80s, whether it's synths to drum sounds. And you listen to Subdivisions, you listen to stuff off of Signals, and it takes you to that place. It takes you to, you know, 82 when that came out. And, you know, it doesn't have the sound that maybe Tom Sawyer had, but it teleports you to that place. You hear songs that have that type of sound and you remember, this song is from this time period. I remember this happened in my life. That happened. I was watching this sporting event. I saw that movie. You know, all of these, I had somebody once tell me, they said, you know, an album is much like a picture album, where it's a point in time in your life when you hear a song or you hear a musical album and it takes you back to that place in your life. And you remember, wow, I remember as we're talking, I got to listen to this song or this band for the first time here. And this song reminds me of this event in my life. So I understand 100% what you're saying, Johan, from the keyboards to Neil's drum sound, who Neil never shied away from liking that electronic drum sound. He still had it till the end.
Yeah.
You know, so that's awesome. Any final words you guys want to say about Rush?
Can't believe that their last album was 10 years ago. I mean, that's a shocker. Shame that they've finished, and it's a shame that obviously Neil's died, and but what a great volume of work to they'll go down in history. Really, it's one of the greatest bands. Certainly one of the greatest bands to come out of Canada. One of the greatest rock bands and prog rock bands ever, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot can be said to the fact that they did go out on their terms. They didn't milk a farewell tour. They just got to the end and Neil said, I can't physically do this anymore. They didn't have a big announcement. They didn't, not until Neil passed away. That was when everyone kind of realized, okay, this is done. And they haven't, to their credit, they haven't tried, bringing in a Mike Portnoy and doing, Rush with someone else. And, I wouldn't be opposed to them, to Geddy and Alex working with another drummer, but not using that name, because I think they're an exception where they could go out and tour under a different name and people would still go see them due to the respect that Neil isn't there. So that's why they're not using the Rush name. They aren't a band like, and it's no knock against like a Stone Temple Pilots or an Alice in Chains, but because those bands became so big commercially, Rush became a commercial band, but on their own merit. They weren't writing to get onto the radio. They weren't writing ballads to make sure that soccer moms were buying their albums. Whereas some of these other bands have done that. And that's why a lot of bands over the years have tried to chase that hit over and over and over again. Rush just did what they did. And their fans, their loyal fans, the diehards, stayed with them through that difficult period while the casual fan came and went, and I think that that's a testament to them and a testament to the fact that if you see some of those later shows, the fans were mixed. They weren't all old guys. They were young kids. They were, because the legacy that they built up until the end and how much they influenced other bands, where that's a testament to them. So, Brad, any final comments on Rush?
I agree with everything you said, and they are. There's very few bands that have accomplished what they have accomplished, and like you said, they did it on their own terms. I mean, yeah, they certainly followed the sound trends of the music at the times, but you could tell they weren't writing to fit that. That was more of a perception thing.
Well, I don't know if it was so much of that or them wanting to experiment. I think that them in the 80s, there were things, yes, that became popular, but I don't know so much if it, again, when we have the Yarg Metal and Mars Attacks interview with Alex and Geddy, we can ask them. But I think it has to do with the fact that they were just such great musicians, and they still are, that somebody presented them with a new set of crayons or a new set of paints, a new style of painting. And they said, wait a second, how can we incorporate this within Rush? How can we take this in? And maybe it could also be boredom on their behalf with saying, you know what, we've proven everything that we can do within these limitations. So we want to push our boundaries and now start incorporating some of these other instruments, So in my opinion, and I'm sorry to cut you off, that's why I think they kind of did that stuff in the 80s. I think it was their want and their need to go beyond what they had done previously.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. They're definitely leaders, not followers.
Yeah,
they definitely did what they wanted to do. And they were successful doing that. They were successful doing whatever they wanted to do. I mean, what other band can say that? Whatever, yeah, they're legends, and everybody knows Rush. Everybody knows a Rush song.
Yeah,
how many bands can say that?
And again, a band that's been heavily sampled within the hip hop community as well. Tom Sawyer's been sampled 1,000,001 times. So, you know, these are things that I know that a lot of people have issues with that, but I think it's a testament to the music that they made, that it speaks to people in all different genres of music. You know, that's how important they are.
Yeah.
So,
So
Johan.
I'll say one more thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Johan, for getting us to this point where we're talking about Rush.
Yeah, I thank you, because the most fun thing is to hear your opinion. That's for me the best thing tonight.
Yeah,
I know
this
my
is
opinion, but it's so fun to hear what you guys think.
Well,
yeah, I think we're small in number, but we're large in quality, and so this has been a great discussion. Thank you guys for letting me join in.
Yeah, no, I have to say that, you know, Johan really wanted to push this, and I think the Jerry, who I'm surprised didn't join us tonight, but Jerry kind of lit the fire with the whole 1981 discussion, and Johan not agreeing with us on what the #1 album was for 1981, and that has gotten us to this point, to having this episode on Rush. And I mean, I love everyone's passion for music, and I love the fact that Johan, you know, has such a passion for Rush. I mean, it was impossible to say no when we started discussing what band we should do next for this. So I'm happy that we were able to get together and talk about Rush, and this has been a lot of fun. So again,
so along those lines, Jeremy and I are going to sit back very quietly and just wait for our moment to talk about Saxon.
I don't know, but when it with Saxon, though, as cool as an idea that I think that is, do you think that Saxon deserves to go before Def Leppard?
No, and I don't think it deserves to go before Black Sabbath or Metallica or those other bands.
No, well, that's what I said. We're willing to wait.
We'll wait.
Okay.
We'll wait.
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Well, that's why it was reassuring when Jeremy said, when I was at a crossroads thinking, okay, well, I'm putting up these lists for people to vote on bands, and people aren't voting on bands. Okay, who are we going to talk about next? And when a bunch of you guys said, after Johan said Rush, and a bunch of people said, yeah, let's do Rush, I was like, thank you. And Jeremy even said there's still a lot of bands we can talk about. So
yeah, no shortage.
Yeah.
So we've got the idea is the 1982 discussion next month, and we'll be doing another discussion that we'll narrow down for the month of April, and then in May we'll be discussing another band. So
sounds good.
There you go.
Sounds good.
One thing's for sure.
What's that?
We're gonna have fun.
We will have fun, and there will be
always
a lot of music talk. That's for sure.
Yeah, everybody who's listening to this after the fact, you need to jump on Victor's Patreon, and you need to join us. And you know, because everybody, there's a lot of music fans out there that have opinions, and we welcome them. Bring it on.
Absolutely. So, any last word, Johan? I'll leave you with the last comment.
Thank you. So, listeners, if you ever want to check out the band that's quality, go to Rush. You never find the immediate hit single, but you will find the music that will stay with you for the rest of your life. Thank you very much.
There you go. I couldn't have said it better. And on that note, thank you, Johan. Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you, Brad. And thank you once again. Thank you, Rob Rowe, CEO Dave.
Happy birthday, CEO Dave.
Happy birthday, CEO Dave. And thank you, Jose, for joining us in the chat. Thank you to anyone who listens to this after the fact. And remember that Signals from Mars goes down every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. in the UK, and 12 midnight Friday going into Saturday for those in Europe. If you happen to be in Australia, 8 a.m. On the Eastern Coast there. And on that note, thank you all. As I like to say, you guys could be doing a million other things, but you choose to be joining us and listening to this or watching this fun chat about Rush. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And on that note, we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream, Mars Attacks podcast. See ya.